understanding of what this optional has for you. Next, we see chapter 4, sociological thinkers, and we will be studying a very interesting theory given by a famous French sociologist, Emile Durkheim. See, this section, chapter 4, sociological thinkers, this has immense importance in your paper 1. Why? Because in last year 2022's paper, as much as 100 marks of paper out of 250 was asked from your chapter 4, sociological thinkers. And if I give you the weighted average of last 4 years, it holds maximum importance of 20%. Even if you leave all the other chapters and do only this chapter, आपके 100 में से 80-90 आने पक्के हैं if all the 6 thinkers in this section are strong for you. ठीक है, सबके थ्योरी, सबके क्रिटिसिज्म आपके टिप्स पे हैं. सो ये आपको बहुत ध्यान से करना होता है. थिंकर्स आपके पकड़ में है, आपका पेपर 1 कहीं नहीं जा रहा. So with this background, let's start Emile Durkheim's theory, what he says about the phenomenon of suicide. So we all are well aware about suicide. Recently, आपने सुना है IIT Bombay, a 17-year-old kid, first semester kid, Darshan Solanki, he committed suicide. And it was in news a lot. Lot of rumors were going on why he committed suicide. Some people said he's from a rural background. He could not cope up with the pressure of competing with the cream of India in the IITs. So he committed suicide. A number of reasons are there. After studying the theory of Emile Durkheim, we'll come back to this case and we'll see why this was the case. Now, this is not just an isolated case. Here we are talking about, in general, a phenomena of suicide among the most prestigious engineering institutes of India. IITs, every IIT you go, there is a one suicide point. Okay? And the maximum number of suicides take place in IIT Kanpur. Least number as of now are taking place in IIT Delhi. So why the phenomenon of suicide is so prevalent among the cream, the most brightest students in the country? Why is this so? Next we see farmer suicide. This is also a phenomenon. Why farmers of an agricultural country like India, where 47% of the people are employed in this sector, why are these people committing suicide? So these are, I am giving you these ideas so that you can think upon the reasons, the causes why a certain section of your society is more prevalent, is more inclined to commit suicide, and why certain other sections are not. Next, I have taken data from National Crime Record Bureau's site, उनकी जो latest report है, and we see this is the data of metropolitan cities. Of all the 4 big metropolitan cities in India, Delhi has the maximum number of suicides. Again, think about it. What are the reasons? What can be the reasons why this phenomenon, this trend has come? Next, we see, if we talk about the state-wise distribution of the percentage of suicides in India, Maharashtra has the highest percentage of suicides taking place in India, 13.5%. Again, what can be the reasons? What are the causes? We'll come back to these slides after I complete the theory, and we'll look at the reasons, the causes why this trend is there in India. Next, if I have to describe by profession, which profession has maximum number of suicides, maximum percentage of suicide, we come up with a very worrisome data that the daily wage earners of India, जो दिहाड़ी मजदूर होते हैं, who have hand to mouth, who live on hand to mouth, if they do not get money on a daily basis, they would have to sleep empty stomach. These people living at the edge of the society, 1/4 of total suicides taking place, 25% is among this section by profession. So again, I am asking you questions. Why do you think this section is more inclined, is more vulnerable to the phenomenon of suicide? Why is this happening? Keep your answers with you. We'll come back to this data again and we'll discuss what are the reasons. With these ideas in mind, with this data of Indian society in mind, let's see what this French sociologist has to say when he was living in 1800s, almost 200 years back we are going, and what he saw. So at that time, as I told you, industrial revolution was going on. After that, French revolution came. So big social changes were going on in entire society of Europe. And as a result of that, number of social challenges came. Poverty increased, people became poorer, inequality increased, rich became richer, poor became poorer. Middle class का rise होता है. People are working in factories under unhygienic conditions for 12 to 14 hours under unhealthy conditions just for meager wages. ठीक है, अर्बन स्लम्स का कॉन्सेप्ट आता है, माइग्रेशन इज टेकिंग प्लेस फ्रॉम रूरल टू अर्बन, दिस डेमोग्राफिक चेंजेस आर टेकिंग प्लेस, एंड वन बिग चेंज that is taking place, that is sweeping the entire society of Europe, is the suicide rate of the entire Europe increases. It becomes rampant, it becomes so visible that this French sociologist becomes so worried that he wanted to study this phenomena. He took this as a subject matter under the discipline of sociology, that why when you talk about industrial revolution you talk about its positive things, but why suicide is increasing. So he, in his book Les Suicide, it's a French book, suicide, les means the, he talks about, he gives the definition of suicide. ये कहता है कि he defines suicide. What is suicide? He says that any death caused directly or indirectly by an individual, by the positive or negative action of an individual, where the individual knows that he will die, is called suicide. I repeat, any action, any death caused directly or indirectly by positive or negative action of an individual, where the individual knows that he or she will die for sure, that is called suicide. ठीक है, अब यहाँ पे डायरेक्टली इनडायरेक्टली का क्या मतलब है, पॉजिटिव नेगेटिव एक्शन का क्या मतलब है? देखो, इनडायरेक्टली का मतलब होता है, इनडायरेक्टली मीन्स दैट द पर्सन डज नॉट इंटेंड टू डाई, ही डज नॉट वांट टू डाई, बट ही इज इन अ प्रोफेशन, he is in that system, he is in that environment where he knows he may die. For example, he is a soldier, आर्मी के जवान हैं, when they go to protect our borders, they know that there is a high chance they may not come back alive. ठीक है, so that Durkheim categorized as suicide, where you don't want to die but you are in the profession, you are in that environment where you know that there are high chances that you may die. Directly to you understand where the individual intends to die, he wants to die. Positive or negative action का क्या मतलब है? Positive action means that he deliberately takes an action. ठीक है, मैंने I consumed rat poison to kill myself. I lied on the railway track so that the train runs over me and I die. I jump from the 7th floor of the building so that I die. So here I am taking an action, a positive action. Negative action basically means inaction. I did not take the action. What action? The action required for me to stay alive. If I do not eat for 30 days continuously, if I go on hunger strike and I'm not eating, my health will deteriorate and I will eventually die. So I did not take the action of eating. So there it means negative action. ठीक है, so this is the definition of suicide given by Emile Durkheim. Next we see that he rejects all the prevalent theories at that time. वो कहता है जो भी उस टाइम पे prevalent theories थी, that why people commit suicide, that he rejected. क्या theories थी? That people of a certain race are committing suicide. he rejected that. Okay, climatic reasons are there. People go into depression in winters, very cold climate people, they are committing. He said, no, climate is also not the reason. Then people came up with historical reasons. Okay, some countries had the history of colonialism, history of slavery, and that is why they are committing suicide. उसने बोला नहीं, ऐसा भी नहीं है. फिर किसी ने बोला कि अल्कोहलिज्म भी था कि बहुत लोग शराब बहुत पीते हैं. तो उसने कहा नहीं यार, अल्कोहलिज्म इज नॉट द रूट कॉज, इट इज अ हैबिट, इट इज नॉट द रूट cause of suicide. So he rejected all the prevalent theories which were circulating in that time, and he comes up with his own theory. He says that the phenomenon of suicide, it is a social phenomena. उसमें climate, geography, history नहीं काम कर रही है. Society is actually forcing you. It is putting constraint on you to commit suicide. So he connected the phenomenon of suicide with society. That was a very revolutionary statement at that time, because sociology as a discipline was budding at that time. So he connected this phenomenon with society. ये किया उसने. And he comes up with certain conclusions. वो उसने अपनी स्टडी करी, पुलिस स्टेशन का जो डेटा था. He studies that, he uses scientific methodologies, multivariate analysis करके एक मेथड होता है, वो उसने यूज किया, and he came up with certain conclusions. Conclusions क्या देता है वो? He says that males are more inclined, they are more prone to commit suicide than women. Now, this is an interesting observation. Next, he says that unmarried people are more inclined to commit suicide than married people. ठीक है? And among married people, with each child, with each increasing child, the probability of committing suicide also decreases. अगर आपके एक बच्चे हैं, आपकी कुछ probability है suicide करने की, but that is less than unmarried. दो बच्चे हैं तो आप बिल्कुल ही commit नहीं करोगे suicide, तीन है तो बिल्कुल नहीं. तो the more number of children you have, the less you are inclined to commit suicide. But this again does not mean that you are living a happy life. It just means that you have more responsibilities towards people around you, so you are not committing suicide. That is my personal observation. Then he says soldiers are more inclined to commit suicide than civilians. Try to observe the trend. What am I trying to show you here? What kind of people here are more prone to commit suicide and what are less prone to commit suicide? Then he says that Catholics या Christianity people are more inclined to commit suicide than Jews. And among Christians, Protestants होते हैं. So just like Islam has Shia Sunni, Christianity has two denominations, Protestants and Catholics. तो Catholics थोड़े orthodox, थोड़े conservative mind के थे. Out of Catholics, the denomination of Protestant came. So it was more liberal, it was little more rational. तो Protestants जो थे, who came out of Catholics, they are more inclined to commit suicide than Catholics. ठीक है? ऐसा क्यों था? ये दुर्खीम ने ऑब्जर्व किया. These were his observations. कि भाई ऐसा हो रहा है. What do you observe? What trend are you observing here? What type of people are more inclined to commit suicide? तो यहाँ से हमारे क्या conclusion निकलता है? First is that again it is a social phenomena. Individual पे reduce नहीं किया. Some section of the society are more inclined to commit suicide and some are not. And he says that people who are more integrated, social integration is the factor here. People who are more integrated into the society, into the social norms, social values, social morality of the society, they are less inclined to commit suicide, who live the mainstream life of the society. जो सोसाइटी आपको पाथ दिखाती है, जो लोग उस पे चल रहे हैं, दे आर लेस इंक्लाइंड टू कमिट सुसाइड. जो उस पाथ को फॉलो नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, दे गो इनटू डिप्रेशन, दे गो इनटू प्रॉब्लम्स एंड देन दे कमिट सुसाइड. तो विमेन तो यू नो, ठीक है, ऑल द सोशल इंस्टीट्यूशंस आर मोस्टली सोशल इंस्टीट्यूशंस आर, they control women in every sense, in terms of dress, in terms of behavior in public space, domestic space. So women are less inclined. Married women, again, marriage is a social institution. Everybody in a society, they say that everybody eventually has to get married. ठीक है, तो ये भी एक सोसाइटी आपको पाथ दिखाती है कि मैरिज करनी जरूरी है. देन सोल्जर्स कंपेयर टू सिविलियंस, more in number, they live more normal life, more they follow social values, norms, morality. ठीक है, soldiers have a very different life, defense life अलग होती है. Christians और Jews में भी, they saw the Jews are more integrated into their religious values than Christians. तो ये phenomena. And Catholics, as I told you, they were orthodox, पुराने विचारों वाले थे. They were more integrated कि हमारे विचार, हमारी सभ्यता, हमारा धर्म ऐसा होना चाहिए. प्रोटेस्टेंट्स थोड़े, अब इन दोनों में बेसिक डिफरेंस ये था कि प्रोटेस्टेंट्स they can have their own interpretation of Bible. कैथोलिक्स ने बोला कि whatever church has interpreted for us, we have to follow it blindly and there is only one interpretation. तो प्रोटेस्टेंट्स ने बोला individual interpretation of Bible is possible and it encouraged inquiry, question पूछना, ठीक है, question things which are going on around you. So this was the latest, more rational denomination and this is more prevalent. So the things, the people of society who were more integrated into the status quo, whatever is going on in society, they have less chances of committing suicide. This was a trend. Social integration is the word here. Then अब क्या होता है, अब first one thing I've missed is when he is doing this research of suicide, he is interested in suicide rates. उसका aim ये था कि why certain societies have more suicide rate and why certain societies have less suicide rate. Why the state of Maharashtra has 13.5% of suicide rate and why other states in India, despite more population, ठीक है, why they have less suicide rate. तो different societies में उसने comparison किया था. He was not interested why an individual commits suicide. What are the reasons why an individual commits suicide? He was interested in comparing different societies, why suicide rate is different in different societies. ठीक है, तो ये this was his aim. तो whenever you write about this theory, always use the word suicide rate and not suicide as such. ठीक है, ये थी. Now he talks about 4 types of suicide. दुर्खीम ने 4 तरह की सुसाइड के बारे में बात किया है. Let's study one by one what these types of suicides are. पहला वो बोलता है, the first type of suicide is altruistic suicide. बहुत fancy word है, बहुत difficult word है, but I'll give you the easier word for it. What is altruistic suicide? सिंपल भाषा में बोले, हिंदी में बोले तो कुर्बानी, समाज के लिए कुर्बानी. और people who don't understand Hindi, sacrifice. I am sacrificing my life for the sake of society. इसमें क्या हो रहा है? इसमें the society we are talking about, यहाँ पे इंटीग्रेशन बहुत ज्यादा है, ओवर इंटीग्रेशन. The individual members of the society are highly integrated into the collective values of the society. ठीक है, for example, sati in India, a woman whose husband dies, a widow, she becomes a widow. Now if she says that I don't have any right to live anymore because my husband is no more, so I will die, I will commit suicide. So here, if she is willingly committing suicide as a result of sati, then this will become an altruistic suicide. But agar she does not want to commit suicide, she wants to live, if the society, let's say if the Brahmins, as given in your NCRT also, if the Brahmins or the ritualistic, the people who carry the burden of rituals that need to be followed in society, if they force her to commit suicide, then it would not be considered an altruistic suicide, it will come under fatalistic suicide, okay, over-regulated society. But here, let me give you another example. 9/11 attack. 9/11 attack mein, when they smashed their airplane into the Twin Tower building, ठीक है, no, they knew that they will die, ठीक है, मरेंगे जो उसमें terrorists हैं, that is an altruistic suicide, that they have a higher purpose, they will get जन्नत, जिहाद के लिए जन्नत मिलेगी, जन्नत नसीब होगी, तो they call themselves शहीद. So this is an altruistic suicide, ठीक है. Another example, if I give you, very interesting example from World War II. World War II किन दो पार्टीज में हो रहा था? It was between Allied and Axis powers. Allied में we had Great Britain, we had Soviet Union, we had US, and Axis powers में हमारे पास थे Germany, Italy and Japan. Now Japan in 1944, in World War II, while World War II is going on, they come up with a strategy that they bring kamikaze pilots. Kamikaze means divine wind, divya hava, या दैविक हवा, and they actually trained their pilots, ठीक है, who were flying their planes, that you have to smash your planes into the naval ships of Britain, ठीक है, कि भाई आपको शहादत प्राप्त होगी, आप मारो, हमें allied powers को हराना है. And their strategy was actually successful. These kamikaze pilots, they smashed their airplanes into the naval ships of Britain, and that's how they were able to protect the empire of Japan to a certain extent. ये हुआ था. Ultimately, Allied powers won, but this was a successful strategy, and this kind of suicide by a pilot, kamikaze pilot, it comes under altruistic suicide. So committing suicide for the greater purpose of protecting your society, for saving the values of their society. So this is an example of over-integration. Your values of the society are over-integrated, ingrained into your values, individual values. ठीक है. अब next हम देखते हैं, second हम बात कर रहे हैं second type की. अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं, we are talking about egoistic suicide. ठीक है, ईगो मीन्स एक इंडिविजुअल की बात हो रही है यहाँ पे. ईगोइस्टिक सुसाइड में क्या होता है? अब अभी हमने क्या बात करी कि देयर वैल्यूज आर ओवर इंटीग्रेटेड, यहाँ पे अंडर लो इंटीग्रेशन, अंडर इंटीग्रेटेड. द वैल्यूज ऑफ द सोसाइटी आर नॉट वेरी वेल इंटीग्रेटेड इनटू द इंडिविजुअल मेंबर्स ऑफ द सोसाइटी. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अब जैसे ओवर इंटीग्रेशन में हमने सती का एग्जाम्पल लिया, तो वी टुक द एग्जाम्पल ऑफ अ ट्रेडिशनल इंडियन सोसाइटी. यहाँ पे वी कैन टॉक अबाउट वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी. इन वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी इंडिविजुअलिज्म इज अ वेरी बिग सोशल वैल्यू. पीपल हैव देयर वेरी इंडिविजुअलिस्टिक लाइफस्टाइल. दे डू नॉट हैव कलेक्टिव वैल्यूज विच दे हैव टू फॉलो. ठीक है, तो द इंडिविजुअल डज नॉट कंसिडर हिमसेल्फ टू बी द पार्ट ऑफ अ सोसाइटल कलेक्टिव होल. ठीक है, he is alienated, he has his own values, and because of that he drifts away from the social mainstream life, and with the smallest of frustration in his life, with the smallest of problem in his life, he goes into depression. छोटी सी प्रॉब्लम हो गई, डिप्रेशन में चले जाते हैं लोग. ठीक है, टीनेज डिप्रेशन इज ऑन अ वेरी हाई स्केल लेवल राइट नाउ इन यूएस because of social media platforms where people compare their lifestyle with others' lifestyle and they feel undervalued. ठीक है, तो डिप्रेशन हुआ, तो डिप्रेशन अगर ज्यादा लंबा चल जाता है दैट लीड्स टू सुसाइड. So here, when the social values of the society are very less integrated, people have their individualistic lifestyle. That is why this individualism overpowers, and with the smallest of problems, they commit suicide. ठीक है, यहाँ पे आपका वेस्टर्न सोसाइटी के जो भी एग्जाम्पल्स आपको डालने हैं आप यहाँ पे डाल सकते हो. नेक्स्ट वी सी द थर्ड टाइप ऑफ suicide Emile Durkheim talks about is we have talked about altruistic, we have talked about egoistic. The third is anomic suicide. And fourth one is fatalistic suicide. ठीक है, यहां पे क्या हो रहा है? फेटलिस्टिक में क्या हो रहा है? ओवर रेगुलेशन. The individual members of the society, their lives are over regulated by the society. For example, अभी ईरान में क्या हुआ था? 22-year-old woman Mahsa Amini, she was killed by morality police, something called morality police in Iran, just because she was not wearing her hijab properly. Her head was little exposed, and the state has something called morality police, which makes sure that everybody follows the social norms, social values properly. So they beat her to death, and because of that, anti-hijab protests, they sweep the entire country and the entire world, where women around the world, they cut their hair, they remove their hijab, and this led to a big revolution. Okay? So here, this is a perfect example of over-regulated society. Also, here I can talk about Saudi Arabia, where women are not allowed to drive vehicles, they are not allowed to drive, so they are dependent on male. So over-regulation, if any society is taking place because of over-regulation in society, that is fatalistic suicide. Giving you the example of, let's say, if a slave commits suicide. Okay, slavery has been banned, but in the past when blacks were the slaves under whites, and they, out of frustration, out of hopelessness, if they are committing suicide, that is fatalistic. In Indian example, you can give the example of Dalit. If a Dalit is committing suicide because of the oppression, the ostracization he has to go through, the humiliation he has to go through because of caste discrimination, that would be considered as fatalistic suicide. Here, again, the rumors are, we don't know what the real reason was, but Darshan Solanki, he has been, there are reasons that maybe because he was a Dalit and he was undergoing caste discrimination on the premises, on the campus of IIT Bombay, and that is why he committed suicide. So this was Dalit Darshan Solanki's example, can be categorized as fatalistic suicide. Okay? Even Rohit Vemula's suicide can be categorized as fatalistic suicide. Clear? Anomic suicide में क्या होता है? Anomic में, when the whole society goes through a big change, a big reflux. What kind of change? It can be a positive change also. For example, economic boom. The economy in general is all of a sudden flourishing, prosperous. Or negative change, economic downturn आ गया. For example, 2008 financial crisis, where people in US lost their properties, real estate crisis, they lost their homes. And positive में, I'll give you the example of green revolution, where everybody wanted to take, even the small and marginal farmers, they wanted to take the advantage of green revolution, so they took loans to buy hybrid variety seeds, to buy big machines, tractors and combines for mechanization of their agricultural fields, and that increased their input cost. So they were aspiring farmers, they took loans in the hope of becoming rich, but because they could not return the loans, they were harassed by the musclemen of banks, and because of this continuous harassment, they did not have any option but to commit suicide. So even economic boom, something like green revolution, can also bring the phenomenon of farmer suicide. And negative में, I've told you 2008 financial crisis, as well as a better example would be pandemic. All the suicides that took place during pandemic, it was a big change which shook the entire society. Big change. And you must have seen during pandemic, every other day there was a news that students from 9th 10th class students from poor families who were on scholarship, government scholarship, but because offline classes were not going on, smartphone classes were going on, and these poor people could not afford a smartphone, so they could not prepare for the upcoming board exams, and these bright students from poor families who were on scholarships, they committed suicides. 14-15-year-old kids committed suicide. So this comes under anemic suicide as a phenomenon of pandemic, as this external force led to the big reflux, big social change in the entire society. So these are the 4 types of suicides Durkheim talks about. Okay. And now we move on to the criticism by different scholars to Durkheim's theory. Ab criticism, any thinker you talk about, you have to write, even if the question does not ask, you have to give its criticism to balance the answer, to give different shades to the answer. Here Atkins, very famous scholar, ये बोलता है, he questions the quality of data used by Durkheim, कि भाई क्वालिटी नहीं अच्छी थी डेटा की. एंड व्हाट रीजंस इज गिव्स, कहता है कि क्वालिटी इसलिए अच्छी नहीं थी बिकॉज कैथोलिक्स जो हैं, कैथोलिक रिलीजन जो है वहां पे, क्रिश्चियनिटी का एक डिनोमिनेशन है, लाइक कैथोलिक्स दे सेंसर्स सुसाइड. मतलब क्या है, उनके धर्म में सुसाइड को बैन किया गया, सुसाइड नहीं करना चाहिए. So this as a society, when they have this value, this religion has this value कि suicide नहीं होना चाहिए, suicide नहीं करना चाहिए, बुरी बात है. तो whatever suicides that took place, they try to disguise them कि भाई ये suicide नहीं था. They try to hide the cases, the number of cases of suicide. So that must have some effect, must have had some effect on the data with police stations. तो भाई जब ये ऐसे प्रॉब्लम्स हो रही हैं तो हम कैसे पुलिस स्टेशन का डेटा यूज कर सकते हैं. सेकेंड प्रॉब्लम विद दुर्खीम स्टडी विच स्कॉलर्स पॉइंटेड आउट वाज कि भाई रिलायबिलिटी नहीं है डेटा की. द डेटा ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ विच ही इज डूइंग दिस रिसर्च इज नॉट रिलायबल. अगेन रीजंस आर that not every suicide gets reported in a police station. Many suicides are there, but not everybody, all the family members who are under remorse, who are under pain, they do not go report, file an FIR. And many suicides are attempted. Attempt to suicide are also not covered in this data. So people may not eventually die, but they may be saved. वो cases भी, attempt to suicide is also not covered. Only the successful, I should not use this word, but the people who actually died due to suicide, that is covered. ये प्रॉब्लम थी. फिर थर्ड एक क्रिटिसिज्म है, फ्रीडमैन करके एक स्कॉलर हैं, ही सेज दैट दुर्खीम हैज एक्चुअली टेकन एन इंडिविजुअल फिनोमेना कि भाई देयर कैन बी एन नंबर ऑफ रीजंस फॉर अ पर्सन टू कमिट सुसाइड, कि कुछ भी रीजन हो सकता है. उसने ही टुक एन इंडिविजुअल फिनोमेना एंड उसको वो सोशल फिनोमेना बोल रहा है. ठीक है, you cannot connect an individual phenomena to a social phenomena. There can be a number of reasons. You are deliberately, forcibly connecting these two things just to establish sociology as a discipline. Deliberately trying to find the social reasons behind an individual phenomenon. ये था. But despite all this criticism, the study of suicide by Emile Durkheim is considered a classic study. Few reasons. Its relevance is even today, even after almost 200 years later, we are studying his theory. Why? Because it's still relevant in today's society. First reason is he used scientific methods. For the first time, a sociologist used scientific methods to collect data, data which was directly observable, which can be studied, and उस पे research करी उसने. तो introduction of scientific tools, scientific methods took place through this study, and the method he used was that we will discuss in some other class, multivariate analysis. This you do not need to study as of now, ठीक है, but question has been asked on it, we will study in some other lecture. Second reason ये था कि an apparently individual phenomena, through his study we get to know that a seemingly apparently individual phenomena demands a sociological explanation rather than an individual exploration. ठीक है, कि हमें जो चीज़ इंडिविजुअल लगती थी उसकी भी एक सोशलॉजिकल एक्सप्लेनेशन निकल के आई. Farmer suicides we talked about suicides in IITs, we talked about suicides among daily wage laborers. This is a social phenomena. So these were the two big contributions by this sociologist, a classic sociologist, and that is why this study is very famous and we study it as one of the main sociological thinkers. Okay. So this is where I end today's demo lecture. I hope you understood this whole study by Emile Durkheim. Lot of people don't understand. I've given you in detail each and every part of this theory, and next, this is the end of this demo. In next demo we'll come up with some other theory of some other thinker. Till then, stay connected. Thank you.